Hello, hello. Welcome to Hack the Earth 2021. Let's begin the opening ceremonies. All right. So, welcome to everyone. We're so excited to have you for this weekend for 36 hours of Hacking for the Environment from June 4th to June 6th. We have a great event planned, and we hope that you'll have an excellent time. My name is Matthews, and I'm one of the organizers here at Hack the Earth. So, let's start off with the challenge statements. We've prepared 6 tracks spanning different areas, environments, problems, and we've prepared some questions for each of them that you could use to help guide your hack. So first of all, the tracks. We have oceans, natural resources, education and awareness, greenhouse gas emissions, waste, and public health. And some of the questions: how might we deal with the consequences of rising ocean levels? Or maybe, how might we protect endangered animal species? Or how might we improve access to public health in developing countries? And we've also created a document with all of these, or you could take a screenshot now. So you can use these to guide your project, or you could pick a different idea. It's up to you, but we have provided these. So now that I've introduced the tracks, let's see what you can win. Please welcome Samer.
Thank you, Matthews. We have many tracks for you to win prizes in, starting with the Best Oceans Hack, where for each team member, you can win a thermally insulated water bottle along with 1 year of Wolfram 1 Personal and Wolfram Alpha Pro to help with all of your development desires. This prize will be given to the project with the best theme in ocean and sea preservation or protection. At the next track, we have the Greenhouse Gas Emissions Hack, where each team member will receive an Apple AirTag/tile, along with 1 year of Wolfram 1 Personal and Wolfram Alpha Pro. This track focuses on the prevention of further greenhouse gases and how to provide a solution to a warming Earth. Next is our Natural Resources Hack, where each team member will win a bonsai tree growing kit, a book of your choice, and 1 year of Wolfram 1 Personal and Wolfram Alpha Pro. Continuing into part 2 of our prizes. For the Best Waste Hack, you can win in-ear monitors, along with 1 year of Wolfram 1 Personal and Wolfram Alpha Pro. This track mainly focuses on how to solve the problem of an ever-consuming and ever-growing population that produces a lot of waste. In our next track, Education and Awareness. Each team member will win a Hue HD Pro camera along with a great mechanical pencil. This category will be given to the project with a focus in educating the public on the very important issues relating to the environment. Next, we have the Best Public Health Hack, where each team member will win a Fire TV Stick Lite along with 1 year of Wolfram 1 Personal and Wolfram Alpha Pro. Moving on, we have the Applied Digital Data First Award, provided to us by our sponsor, Applied Digital. This award will be given to the team that incorporates data-first approaches to their work by leveraging data effectively to enable efficient decision-making. This is an opt-in prize. Each team member of the winning team will be given $200 in Amazon gift cards. Moving on to our bonus prizes, we have the Best Hardware Hack, where each team member will win a Raspberry Pi Zero with accompanying kit for their great work. The last two of our awards include the Best Beginner Hack and the Hacker's Choice Prize. The team that wins the Best Beginner Hack will receive a Google Nest Mini for each team member. Please note that this track will only be available to first-time hackers, hence the name, Beginner Hack. Lastly, the team that wins the Hacker's Choice Prize will win a $25 gift card for each team member to a store of their choice. The winner of this prize will be chosen through DevPost, through the liking system on DevPost, so make sure you like your favorite projects to see your favorite project win. Now back to Matthews to carry on with our opening ceremonies.
Thank you, Samer, for taking us through our prizes. We actually have one more prize, and that is the first place prize that will be awarded to one of the track winners. And in addition to a track prize, they'll win a virtual private meeting with the Honorable Jonathan Wilkinson, who's the Canadian Minister of Environment and Climate Change. Now, Minister Wilkinson is one of the leading figures in the Canadian government working to combat the world's climate change issue. Certainly a great experience. And now, on to how you'll win these prizes with Bonnie.
Thank you, Matthew. Isn't that a great first place prize? What an opportunity it is to speak with such a leading figure in our own country on climate change. Now, here is an outline of our judging criteria for this event. There are 4 areas where your project will be evaluated by our panel of judges: problem definition and solution fit, impact and innovation, viability, and problem implementation. The judges will consider questions among these lines: how precise and relevant is that problem that you have defined? How effective is your project in providing a solution to this issue? How impactful is your project? Is the project viable in providing a solution to said issue? Can it be used in the real world? How technically challenging is the project? These are all questions that will be asked when judging your submission. Also, just as a reminder here, the technicality on how technical your project may be in terms of technology is only a small portion of the rubric. So even if this is your first time in a hackathon, or if this is your first time doing something tech related, not to worry. These things are all taken into consideration with our judging. So please feel free to take a quick screenshot of our rubric or come back to this video later. The judging criteria is also available on our dev post. Now, onto the rules for your submission. So with the evaluation outline, we welcome all kinds of technology hacks, be that software, hardware, or more. As I mentioned before, you don't need to be super well versed in CS or in technology to participate in this event. If it's related to tech and the environment, we'll take it with open arms. Please make sure to submit your project on DevPost by 9 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time on June 6th, and your submission will include a demo video of your project with a maximum of 3 minutes for said video. A link to your GitHub repo is recommended but not required. So now next to Angela for a quick breakdown of our hackathon schedule.
Great, thank you so much, Bonnie. So I will be explaining the schedule. Join us with the following planned events. Now, all of these events and the times that I'm listing are in Eastern Daylight Time. After our opening ceremonies, join us on a voice call in the Discord at 8:30 p.m. So that's approximately an hour and a half from now to find a team if you haven't already. Meet some new people and feel free to hop in whenever, though not too late, as we'll be concluding the session according to necessity. You can also list your personal credentials in team searching or the team searching text channels in the Discord. At 9 p.m., join us in a workshop on entrepreneurial steps to hack the earth, which is also when hacking begins. This workshop is all about how to turn ideas into real impact and can definitely help with honing your ideas into real projects with amazing impact and feasibility. At 10 p.m., we'll have a workshop on an introduction to Python, a coding language designed for beginners, followed by a workshop at 11 p.m. on prototyping with Figma, which is a beginner-friendly tool used to prototype apps. Next, on June 5th, at midnight, we'll have a fun scribble game to take a quick break from hacking. If you think Matthews has a voice perfectly suited for ASMR, you'll enjoy this next event. He'll be reading a bedtime story at 1 a.m. to wrap up the first night of hacking. Back up and at 'em at 9 a.m., you'll be able to have breakfast with the organizers in Discord voice channel, with another workshop at noon in Flask API development. It may sound scary, but don't worry. This is a web framework for Python designed to provide functionality for building web applications. After this morning session, this gives you plenty of time to hack during the day. At 2 p.m., we'll have a meetup with our high school students taking place in the Discord voice channel as well, with a Kahoot at 4 p.m. At 6 p.m., we'll have another workshop on how to pitch and take a project further than a hackathon. This is actually presented by a track winner from Hack the Earth 2020 who went on to develop his winning project into an entire organization. A Garchik phone game is taking place at 8 p.m. and then slideshow karaoke at 10 p.m. to wrap up the day. Don't worry, there's no singing involved. On the last day of our hackathon, at midnight, we'll have Minecraft minigames to take another quick break from hacking, followed by a hacker and organizer meetup at 1 a.m. Be sure to get lots of rest and work on your projects as they are due on DevPost at 9 a.m. sharp. Please make sure to hand it in on time and according to our previous submission guidelines. Following that, judging begins, and then at 7 p.m., we'll have our closing ceremonies with our winners announced. If you miss any of the workshops marked on the schedule on our website in red, we'll be uploading it as a video to our YouTube channel. We'll also be doing the same with this opening ceremonies and likely closing ceremonies as well. Next up, Nathan.
If you're not on our Discord server yet, make sure to join. If you are in the server, make sure that you have your nickname set to your full name and have reacted to gain the hacker role. The server is mandatory for participation in our hackathon, but we'll also be having loads of fun meeting new people and talking about our projects. Literally bucket loads of fun. The link to the Discord has been emailed to the email listed in your initial registration, and if you are unable to find it, you can also send an email to us at hello@hacktheearth.ca. That's the end of our opening ceremonies. Thanks for joining us, and if you have any questions, feel free to send them in the hashtag support channel in our Discord server or email us at hello@hacktheearth.ca. Coming up in a few minutes, we'll be hearing from our featured speaker. Dr. Nandita Basu is an associate professor at the University of Waterloo in water sustainability and ecohydrology. Nandita will be speaking on the importance of sustainability and her work at the University of Waterloo. Whether you're new to the environment or an ecology expert, this chill fireside chat is sure to help you. Be sure to keep an eye on the Discord as we'll be making announcements when new events begin. You can find the full schedule in the Discord text channel #schedule or on the hacktheearth.ca website. Now, without further ado, get ready, get set, and hack away. Good luck.
All right. Let's begin the fireside chat. So I guess I'll introduce myself first. My name is Matthews. I'm one of the organizers at Hack the Earth. And Levi is one of our mentors, also a teacher. And we already heard a bit about Nandita, Professor Waterloo. I'm not going to say too much. I'll let you guys take the stage.
Good evening. Well,
oh. Good. Very good.
All right.
So I guess we can start. Tell us about a bit about yourself, a bit of what you do.
thanks so much, Matthews. Good evening, everyone. So my name is Nandita Basu. I'm an associate professor at the University of Waterloo. I work broadly on water issues, water sustainability issues. So things like you go to a beach and there is a beach closure and there's some algal blooms in the beach and you can't use the water. Those are the kinds of things I work on. What are the things that are happening? So you go put some fertilizer on your lawn and maybe that fertilizer runs off into your lakes and rivers and pollutes the water, or maybe it enters your groundwater and you polluting your groundwater. So it is a problem with drinking water. I also work on things like wildfires. You've seen a lot of wildfires happening in the recent past and the impact of those wildfires on water quality and drinking water challenges. Also work on things like wetlands, nature-based solutions, things like wetlands that purify the water and protect our downstream water. So a lot of things related to broadly water sustainability and environmental challenges.
That's excellent. Should I introduce myself, Matthews?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Sure. So my name is Levi, and I work for the Waterloo Region District School Board, and I'm an environmental educator. Loosely, my job is to teach students about nature and the environment. And when we're lucky enough to do so, we get to do this outside in an experiential way. And sometimes we do it virtually through mediums like this. So it's really a privilege to be able to work with students across Waterloo Region and talking about the importance of nature and having a healthy relationship with our environment, and encouraging our students to think broadly about what sustainability is and what role we as individuals play in maintaining a healthy planet.
That's awesome. Before I continue, I'd like to let the audience know that you can type any questions you have in the chat, and I will relay them on. So I guess we'll start with some introductory questions. I guess, why did you choose this career path? Why do you work with the environment?
So I'll tell you about me, Matthew. So I grew up in India, and in a city in India on the east coast of India called Calcutta. And water quality, water challenges is kind of intricately woven in growing up. For example, here you turn your tap on and you can drink water from your tap. Growing up in India, you could never do that. You conditioned yourself. You would never do that without putting the water through a filter, some kind of filter. We all had in-house filters that we filtered our water through to be able to drink it. So water challenges and things related to water was always something that I was really motivated and inspired by. I also loved, I mean, it's in a kind of weird kind of way, I think the physics of water, right? Thinking about what water does in landscapes and how it moves and kind of the fluidity of it, and how it was just something that fascinated me since I was a child. So kind of that environmental part, but also thinking about water in many different kinds of ways.
That's really interesting. So kind of a personal connection there, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And you, Levi?
I think I have a personal connection to water as well. Just growing up, my family just loved to be outdoors, and so my earliest memories are, being out on the water, in the canoe, fishing with my dad, and there was that, just I think from day one, this sort of intimate relationship with nature and the environment, and water was just an intimate part of that. So I think that's perhaps my connection to water.
Yeah, awesome. So we have one question from the chat. I think this is for you, Nandita, specifically. What kind of research and what in particular do you do?
So broadly speaking, I develop models. A lot of our work focuses on developing these computer models to answer a whole range of questions, right? So I'll give you an example of a question. So we know generally that a wetland is good for downstream waters, right? So if you put a wetland, so if I think about, I go outside my house, there's the Laurelwood Stormwater Pond, and that purifies a lot of the pollutants, takes it up and cleans it, right? So we know that generally. Some of our work we did, we said, well, if you increase the area of wetlands across a large geographic area, if you increase it 10%, how much can you remove the pollutants? So we found out that you can reduce it by 50%, right? So while we know that wetlands are good, what kind of our models tell us is how good, right? Which is important because it allows like people like policymakers or people who are putting in money for wetland restoration to make informed choices. And our work also tell us, where will you put in more wetlands? Where will you get it so that it will have more benefit and less cost? So those kinds of decisions, we have different models. Then we also have models that tell you, well, we have a changing climate. So in future, as our storms become more intense, what does that mean to, say, algal blooms in Lake Erie? Will we get more blooms, and how much more, and things like that? So a lot of computer modeling and equations, and a lot of working with data. Personally in my group, we don't do a lot of data collection. There's a lot of other people that go out into the field, measure stuff, and collect data. A lot of our work uses other people's data that has been collected. We do a little bit of data collection, but mostly we do other people's data. I'll tell you a funny story. My 7-year-old told me the other day that he wants to be a scientist, but not my kind of scientist, the one that sits in front of the computer. He wants to be someone that blows up things. So I do a lot of computer modeling.
Yeah, interesting. So you work with a lot of data, computers.
One of the challenges often is collecting that data. And
Yes.
This is one of the ways technology has really, I think, aided environmentalists, is made it much easier to deploy automated sensors that can collect information about water quality, air quality, soil health, and so on, concentrations of greenhouse gases. So that's for anybody still thinking about topics, ways of improving the accuracy and the different types of things that we can monitor in our environment, and then creating ways to have that data become accessible would be a great topic for a hack. And there are lots of hacks, or not hacks, there are lots of data sets out there that aren't necessarily well integrated. So that'd be another potential topic, would be to find a way to make some of that data more accessible. I'm curious, Nandita, where do you get like a lot of your data? Is it from organizations like StatsCan, or?
Yeah, so the point that you raised, Levi, is actually really, really important, right? There's two challenges, right? One is there isn't enough data a lot of times because it's challenging to collect it. So technological innovation, we're moving very, very fast now, but still it's not enough. There's a lot to be done in terms of newer and newer sensors and data collection. And then there is available data sets. So Stat Canada has data. For Ontario, there's the Provincial Water Quality Monitoring Network that has data. So there's multiple data, but it's not well integrated. The platforms, they are all different platforms. They have their own idiosyncrasies. So there's work to be done in terms of harmonizing this data set. We also work a lot with satellite data. So satellites are now collecting an enormous amount of data, from like flooding patterns to algal blooms to wetlands, and how the water levels in them change, to some of them are even collecting things like soil carbon data. So satellite technology is really, really moving very, very fast. So we access, and with Google Earth Engine, you can play with them a lot. It's much more accessible now today than a few years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've noticed a lot of citizen science things springing up. Citizen science has been popular, for years, but with the advent of the internet and social media, there's been an explosion in that citizen science. The idea that people can make observations sometimes through their smartphone. Maybe it's taking a picture of a wetland that has an algae bloom happening,
right?
And then that data can then be uploaded to a server where scientists such as yourself could analyze it. Do you have a citizen science initiative that you like or that you've used?
So there's quite a few going on that are really nice. I haven't used any one of them in here. I used some when I was in US. There's one that I think is really cool, where there is a group out of the Global Water Futures, it is a big group of water scientists that are doing huge amounts of work related to water challenges in Canada. And one subgroup of that is developing an app, which is kind of what you were talking about, Levi, in terms of taking water quality samples and doing something simple with their smartphone and sending all that message and being able to integrate all that information, which is really, really cool.
That's neat. Yeah, like those things that we carry around in our pockets are able to do so much.
Huge. Yeah.
It's like a simple picture.
I'll give you another example of a thing that's kind of simple in terms of somebody is doing this work. So one of the challenges in environmental work is also how much do we value our natural ecosystem, right? Point is, the wetland gets lost because there's not a dollar value on it, and the building that you're building on top of it has a dollar value, right? So there's a group of scientists that say, how do we quantify that value? How do we say, this is how much this wetland is worth? So this group is doing this cool work where they digitag all pictures that people are taking in natural areas around Toronto. And then based on the number of visits to a natural area, they would say, well, this much of people value it because they are going there that often, and use that to kind of put a number to it.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I can really imagine, like, the developments in technology is, well, first of all, making your life a lot easier, but also just advancing the field a lot further. And I guess kind of relates to this hackathon, right? I think advancements in machine learning and with data, it's really important now.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So Now I'm going to ask something a bit more for like the hackers. Kind of what do you think are the biggest challenges we're facing right now? Maybe just the biggest, but what are we facing now in the world?
So of course, I mean, climate change, right? That's one of the biggest things that we are facing today. Even 5 or 10 years ago, it was farther in the future. And now we are living within climate change. The things that we are seeing in terms of increasing frequency of extreme events, increasing wildfires. We are living it every day, increasing algal blooms. I mean, all of these challenges, increasing flooding in areas, drought in other areas, like it is all over the place and it's increasing. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges that needs kind of a multi-tiered approach, right? On one hand, we need to do stuff now for the next 10 years so that we kind of rein it back in. And on the other hand, we have to develop new technologies to adapt to what is already happening, right? So that's I would say one of the biggest challenges in terms of that. Of course, the other challenges are also kind of related to it. So water quality, algal blooms is also another big challenge, right? Because again, there's increasing incidences of algal blooms, there's increasing water pollution, increasing our freshwater resources are being threatened and ecosystems are being threatened. I mean, I can go on and on. There's all these novel contaminants. This plastic pollution is just massive right now, and it's becoming, it's increasing in intensity so much. And then every day there's 100 new synthetic chemicals that we are putting out in the market, and these are flooding, and we really aren't even at the tip of the iceberg trying to figure out the impacts that these have and the impacts that they have together on the environment. Biodiversity loss. I mean, we are seeing invasive species all around. Our biodiversity of our landscapes are completely changing. So there's a laundry list of a lot, but I'll start with climate change.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. I think all of these environmental problems are like fundamentally integrated, like climate change, habitat loss, pollution, invasive species. These things are all intimately related, and it can be kind of hard to tease them apart, but climate change is definitely at the top of the list. I think sometimes we forget about biodiversity loss as a topic, but the sad truth is hundreds, if not thousands, of species are going extinct. Like 100 species might be going extinct a day. That's too many. We are really, I think, entering a period of time where it's essentially looking like a mass extinction event. That's our fault. So certainly trying to find a way to curb extinctions is, I think, a worthwhile initiative if someone's looking for a topic.
Yeah, and what I've heard, tell me if this is incorrect, but a lot of it is kind of industry and I guess kind of factors that are beyond our control as individuals. So I guess first of all, is that true? And secondly, as individuals, what can we do to tackle this problem of climate change?
So definitely, I mean, industry has there's always that personal responsibility and kind of the global political scenario, right? So both are there. I would start by saying that I think people also make up the bigger community, right? So I think there are things you can do personally, obviously, but there are also things that people can do together as a community. And if there is a movement in a particular direction, we can make things happen despite industry, right? So if you think about like the Clean Water Act, right? Our rivers were all really, really polluted and industry was causing the pollution. And then there was the Clean Water Act that was passed and today industry doesn't discharge that much pollutant in the river, right? So I think there's positive ways of moving that needle.
Mm-hmm. And I would agree with that too. There's a personal responsibility that we shouldn't abdicate by blaming, anybody else, including corporations. I definitely think one of the things we should be doing is shining a light on we shouldn't maybe shine a light on individuals, but shine a light on corporations and governments that aren't doing their part. So maybe an important thing for people to consider is finding a way to, either raise your voice or amplify others' voices on a topic. So communications technology as a topic for a hack, and finding a way to maybe leverage the power inherent in social media to amplify, messaging around climate change or biodiversity loss or invasive species or pollution. Like that would also be another very worthwhile topic.
So maybe it isn't the individual, but each person has a part to play, and collectively we have to work together.
Yeah.
Well said. Yep.
Exactly.
All right, awesome. And I've got a question from the audience. So what do you think will be the future of our planet?
I think the future is good. There's a lot of challenges, but there's also a lot of opportunities and a lot of awareness, right? So I talked a lot about problems, but I also think that I think we as a community, we need to focus on the positives and the solutions, right? Because the doomsday scenario sometimes leads to inaction. Like if it's going to all go to, if nothing's going to work, what's the point? Let's just forget about it, right? So I think there's tremendous opportunities, there's tremendous progress that's being made. I think the next decade, there's a huge amount of change that we're going to see happen because of the paths that we've taken. And I think it's going to move us in a positive direction. But I think we really need to act now. I mean, the advocacy and the things that I'm saying specifically from the younger generation, I find that really inspiring. And you're the people to make that change. So,
Nandita, you're in a neat place because you work at a university, and you associate with lots of brilliant students and very passionate people, other professors, and is there anything you can take from that experience that inspires you?
To me, the best thing, and I think probably this is true for you too, Larry, is about when you're interacting mostly with younger people. It's just very positive. They're there, kind of like, what needs to be done now? Let's figure a way out. And I think that's one of the best things about being in a university atmosphere. There's just a lot of the positivity in there. I have a colleague who has this idea. This is what I was talking about, positivity. I have two colleagues that talk about these two things that I find really inspiring. One of them, she's at McGill. She talks about this idea called bright spots, seeds of a good Anthropocene. So the idea is that there are these seeds. Seeds are examples of positive stories across the world. So she collects these seeds and says we should water these seeds so that they germinate and then spread them. Right. So that's a vision in terms of, so a seed can be a positive story of a city reducing its plastic pollution, right? That is a seed. And then that kind of spreads, like, so we figure out ways to nurture the seed. And similar idea, another colleague talks about this idea of hero projects. So really thinking about these positive stories and positive messages and trying to build up from there instead of getting bogged down by the challenges.
Yeah, I love that. It's very aspirational, and you're right. Certainly, there's a lot of hope in our youth, and I certainly think being at an academic institution or working in a school board, it's just wonderful to see all of the fresh ideas and the sort of the willingness to engage in an issue and try and find a solution. So I love those ideas, like the taking the seed and trying to help it bloom.
And if anybody is interested, Matthews, I can send the link. They actually have a website called Seeds of a Good Anthropocene, and you can go on. I mean, thinking about hackathon ideas, right? So what they did as a community is that they created this global map, and you can go in, put your seed in of your project, and then together you look at all those and you feel amazed that there's so many cool things going on around the world. So that's what they created.
Yeah. That's cool. And I'm really glad that you both have really positive views, because often we'll hear, we've crossed the threshold, there's no going back or whatever. But you guys are very hopeful, and you see good things in the future for the environment.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's a mix of things. It's the mix of that positivity and that energy. And it's also, I think, just a partly reflection of our own innovation. I think there are huge challenges, absolutely, but we've proven, time and again to be, incredibly creative and resourceful. And I think maybe one of the challenges is going to be taking some of that resourcefulness and bringing it to like a broader public consciousness, getting like buy-in, at a scale large enough to create change.
Yeah, definitely. I'll choose another question from the audience, I guess kind of related. Now, I know we're talking positivity, but what if we can't slow down climate change enough?
I think we have to learn to adapt to it. And there will be, this is the thing, right? There is positivity, but there's also, we are seeing right now the impacts of climate change in many parts of the world. There's turnaround every other day, and there is a big hurricane here or an earthquake there that is killing people. So there are these stories around the world. So we just have to, I think part of it is we work at slowing it down, but part of it we have to learn to adapt to it and to live with it. We basically created the world we live in, and we have to learn to make the best out of it. One of the challenges, of course, with that, it's the vulnerable population that's impacted the most. And they are probably the ones that have the least impact in terms of changing climate, but they are impacted the most. So it's not a fair kind of transference of impact, but part of it is that we have to learn to adapt. There's a lot of people also talking about cool kinds of innovation. There's a lot of people that work on that, right? So for example, I have one colleague at Waterloo who works in a lot of the developing world, and where there's significant flooding challenges, and she designs these houses that are on these floating foundations. Right, so they can withstand flooding events much more easily. So there's a lot of innovation in terms of accepting that there is some amount of climate change that we have no control over, and adapting to it.
Yeah, so I guess we already do see some effects, and it'll be important for us to not only slow down climate change, but to adapt to what's currently happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, how about a question? Let's do a hackathon related question. So I guess what's an idea or a concept related to the environment and related to technology that you might want to see in a hackathon?
Okay. So there's multiple, but I think there's tremendous potential in using social media in unique ways, which I think there's a huge amount of potential, I will say, either for building up advocacy, building up buy-in. I was talking to a colleague the other day, and one of the points that he was making is that, a lot of the technologies that we need exist. Right. What is missing is uptake of these technologies, of people really doing what needs to be done. And part of that is education. Part of that is motivation. Part of that is kind of building a movement towards it. Right. And I think social media, we've seen the tremendous power of social media in bad. It's time that we figure out innovative ways to really tap into that space for good, right? I have another colleague, I think about his work a lot. So he works in management, and he says, the environmental world, in the management world, when we want to sell a particular thing, we know how to do it, right? If you think about any product, but you say the environmental work, you guys really don't know how to sell stuff. You just think you'll appeal to people's good senses, and that's your the way you will sell an idea or a product to them. You really need to get more like tie into what really needs to be done to really have people embrace these large scale changes. So I think there's a huge amount of use of social media to be able to do things like that.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. Like, the scientists can write these papers all day, but then what?
Exactly.
I know my group has seen the same thing where we have a great idea and we think it's self-explanatory. It's such a brilliant idea. Everybody's going to see how brilliant this is. We'll just do it. And it's, unfortunately, if you can't get your idea out there effectively, no one's going to jump on board and lend that topic or that idea their voice. So yeah, that's a great suggestion, Nandita.
Anything in particular that you want to see explored, Levi?
Oh man, that's a good one. I'm not sure. I think there's like Nandita said, there's so many choices out there. Social media is a great one. I really like the citizen science platforms. I think there's a ton of power in like machine learning and like facial recognition technology being leveraged to help identify, invasive species or, rare plants. Even sort of technology is a little more traditional, but like using satellite imagery and trying to point, again, like machine learning at something like satellite imagery to like learn new things about our world. I think that's another, really amazing sort of opportunity there. I was thinking a while ago about, like Twitter bots and things like that. Is there a way that we could automate some of that to amplify messages? There's a lot. I don't know if I could pick just one, to be perfectly honest.
Some really good ideas. So people in the audience, take note. This is what you're working on. All right. Let's go back to another audience question. So we're gonna go back onto a little gloomy note.
Okay.
So we're in this pandemic now, COVID-19, and it's still not over, right? It's going to have a lasting effect for sure. And with this recent outbreak, do you think that we're still on track to complete the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals by 2030?
So that's a tough one, honestly, right? Because the Sustainable Development Goals are challenging, and sometimes they end up being more aspirational. They're a good. It is. There's challenges in achieving some of them. We've made progress, and we are making progress. And I would say, at least the Canadian government, I'm seeing a lot of interest in climate-focused action and funding and things like that. So there's a lot of positive action. But there's also significant challenges, like you noted with the pandemic. These are things that in some ways we all knew, right? Because if you listen to it was known that there would be a pandemic that was happen, but in some ways it took us completely by surprise and took us on a completely different path. So it's challenging, but again.
Yeah.
But with goals, I think the biggest thing about goals, and this is coming back to your individual goals to sustainable development. So whatever the goals are, sitting and thinking, will I ever be able to achieve it? Probably is not the best thing. I think we should always go full throttle into doing as much as we can to be able to achieve it.
I like that.
I like that, like the Sustainability Development Goals go beyond climate change. That if you look at, I think there's 17 of these different targets. I like that they make the point that what we're really aiming at is a world that we all want to live in, right? Where we've got a healthy climate, we have healthy water, we have healthy land. Everybody has good work. There's gender equality. We're working towards limiting, like bringing people up out of poverty. And I like the message that to attain success on climate change, we have to make progress on all of these other goals as well. So I guess I'm personally hopeful that we might not hit the specific goals like when we talk about percentages of greenhouse gases and things like that. But I would hope that because we're aiming at a world that we all want to live in, that the world will be moving in the right direction. And I hope anyway that we've set the bar high to motivate people to get there. I guess that would be my personal perspective on it. I'm not sure, Nandita, did you have a feeling about like the fact that we're aiming at climate change as maybe the challenge of our generation, but how do you feel about like the idea that we really need to be taking action on all of these other pieces as well?
I think that is a really, really important point, right? I think it's important to not get siloed in this one thing. I think ultimately they're so intricately tied together, right? Because if you can't solve poverty, there's going to be deforestation. And if you can't stop deforestation, there's going to be water quality problems. And a recent paper talked about how when you have algal blooms, you actually lead to more climate problems because they put out a bunch of methane into the atmosphere. So it's all tied together, right? We can't kind of take it apart and say, okay, I'll solve this problem now and that later, right? You have to solve it together because it's, I don't know if you guys are familiar, Matthews, with this term, wicked problems. So a lot of the environmental problems that we deal with are what's called wicked problems. The idea of wicked problems is that it's like you try to solve something, there's another problem that comes up, and you try to solve something else and another problem comes up, right? They don't have a stopping rule to them, and they require constant adaptation and innovation to keep moving forward on them, right? It's a really interesting idea. There's like 15 characteristics of wicked problems that characterize a problem as a wicked problem. So it doesn't have a stopping rule. There's feedback. There's a lot of different rules. But basically, all of these problems that we are talking about are kind of that, right? And the idea with wicked problems is you can't do it in a linear way. You can say, here's my problem, and here's how I'll solve it. You have to say, here's my problem, here's how we'll attempt to solve it. As I'm solving it, I'm going to probably change direction because maybe something else has popped up, and then I'll change again. And you have to do it in an adaptive way, right? So that's the thing with the environmental problems. You can't say, I'm going to solve climate change now and then poverty later, right?
The world is such a complex place, and all of these systems are interwoven. That's right. So, like, if we just only focused on solving climate change, we would ultimately fail because we would neglect all these other very real problems. And so, like, progressing forward to this vision of the future that where we have the world we want, I think is ultimately the goal. Not just we don't want climate change, but we want a good, happy, healthy world for everyone.
Yeah, that's like maybe something that we don't always think about. We just think, one example that I heard of is like India has a lot of emissions, right? And the point was like the United States is criticizing India because you're having so many carbon emissions, but the United States has developed a long time ago, and India is just entering their kind of industrial revolution. And how come they have to, stop their development when other countries like United States or the UK have already gone through this?
Exactly. I used to do a exercise in my water sustainability class where I asked the students to calculate if every person in India and China decides to have 2 eggs for breakfast, something that we don't think twice about. What is the excess water consumption that would lead to that we've not thought about? And it's mind-boggling if you do the math.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. How about this one? Maybe kind of a two-part question. But firstly, what are some things that we do in our everyday lives that's actually harmful for the environment? And I guess to add on to that, what kind of changes or what habits can we incorporate into our personal lives?
So, go ahead. Do you want to?
I was just going to add on to what Matthew was saying. I think that's a good next question, just because we're talking about huge, big problems, but that can be really hard to like build a hack around. So I wonder if we can sort of try and zoom down now to like the level where we do have like volition and we can make choice. So yeah, what are some like everyday kinds of things that actually are harmful to the environment?
So I think broadly speaking, right, consumption. So if you think about any of these challenges, there are certain consumption patterns that we have, and that consumption has an impact on the environment, right? So if you're talking about water consumption, from low head showers to not watering your lawn all the time, so there's these water consumption things, to energy consumption and what kind of energy, how much energy you use, and better energy consumption, to things like dietary changes, right? So not going to one extreme or the other, but recognize that your diet has a water footprint and an environmental footprint, and be conscious about the dietary choices you make, because that has an impact. Food waste has an impact. So there's challenges with composting a lot of times and things like that. So those have a role to play. So there's multi-layered in a lot of these impacts. And again, the first step in them is definitely awareness, right? So again, with my water sustainability class, I have the students take their regular diets and calculate their water footprints based on diet, and then say, if you changed it this way, how much water would change, right?
Mm-hmm. So much of our consumption is built into our infrastructure, and it can be hard to escape. And sometimes the costs are hidden from us when water just gushes from the tap, and it essentially seems limitless and virtually free. It can be hard for many of us to think of it as a limited resource. So yeah, absolutely, thinking about consumption patterns is interesting, and there's lots of design decisions that have gone into the way we live our lives that often lead to excessive consumption. I think about this sometimes when I look at my fridge, open my fridge, and if the shelves look a little bare, I'm like, oh, I must be short on something. I better go to the grocery store and fill my fridge, even though like there's tons of food in there, and in fact some of the food's probably going bad, but it's because it looks empty. I start to worry. So I think design sometimes is an interesting way of looking at tackling sometimes some of those consumption patterns. And is there a way to design our lives to, instead of encourage consumption, but to like try and envision a world where we consume only what we need? That might not fly well with any of the business majors out there, but
right.
I think it's something that needs to be given some thought for sure.
Yeah, I guess maybe our world is, our society at least, is not designed for consuming very little. I guess kind of the market runs on keep on buying things and keeping the fridge full.
Mm-hmm.
But talking of hackathon ideas, I mean, there could be hackathon ideas about food wastage, right? So if you think about the grocery chains, and there's a ton of food wasted in these grocery chains, and figuring out ways to minimize that wastage could be an interest. I mean, I forget the actual number, but 20 to 30% of the food that we eat is wasted. It's waste, and all of that goes into landfills. Some of it is composted. We are not very good at effectively composting it, so we are using up huge amounts of land space in terms of these landfills. And then these landfills leak pollutants to our rivers. So we are using so much energy, so much fertilizer to grow this food, then we can't manage it effectively and we're wasting it, and then it's polluting again, right? So there's a lot of kind of hidden places where we can go in and figure out ways to minimize those.
Mm-hmm. And when we think about climate change issues, it's important to, like, when we think about our everyday lives, think about, like, where do our greenhouse gas emissions come from? Is it from our home? Is it from where we work? Is it from our transportation system? Is it from industry? Is it from agriculture? And then looking for the opportunities, in that. And just like, for example, in Waterloo Region, like, probably close to 40 or 50% of our greenhouse gas emissions come from transport. So, like, in a sense, that's the low hanging fruit, is we have to find, why is that the biggest sector for greenhouse gas emissions, and what can we do about it? And why aren't more people, getting on the bus and taking public transit, for example? And once we can identify what the roadblocks are for getting people into buses and into trains, then we can, like, get people there. And sometimes I've heard this problem referred to as, like, the last mile problem, and it's you have to, you get close to where you're going, but then you're not all the way, and so there's a gap in that transit where if you just hopped in your car, it would be door to door. So how do we fix that for people, as a way of encouraging them to use public transit more often? So I think there's a lot of room in the world, especially around greenhouse gas emissions and things like that, to find neat technological ways or innovative ways to get people out of their cars and into the buses and into public transit.
Yeah, that's a really interesting problem. So we're almost out of time. So I'll ask one final question, and then I'll give you guys a few minutes after if you want to say anything else to the hackers that hack the earth. So final questions. Any suggestions for someone pursuing a career in environment, and specifically environmental scientist?
Don't know exactly what that's asking, but I would say it's a really exciting space to be. There's multiple opportunities and there's multiple directions you could go. So I would say figure out what speaks to you, talk to multiple people. Like at Waterloo, I'll give you an example, right? If you want to study environmental science at Waterloo, you could be a part of the Earth and Environmental Science Department, which I'm a part of, and study environmental science there. You could be a part of the Environmental Engineering Department, which I'm a appointed in these two departments. So you could also be a part of the environmental engineering program. You could also be a part of the Faculty of Environment, which has an environmental science program, right? So there's multiple ways in which you can enter in this environmental world, and all of these ways do things like environmental science and engineering. So multiple opportunities to figure out what you want to do or where you want to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would say differentiate yourself. It's competitive to get into, these disciplines, and when you're applying to university and when you're applying to to work, you're probably competing with a lot of people who have very similar credentials. So the thing that's going to distinguish you and differentiate you from the competition is going to be participation in things like this. Like, you're demonstrating an interest that goes beyond, just I'm doing it for the degree or I'm doing it for the money. You're demonstrating that this is something that you care about in a genuine way, to the point where you're going to dedicate some of your personal life, your personal time to pursuing. So for everybody who's, here in this hackathon, I think you're well on your way to doing that, to demonstrating, an interest in engaging in an authentic way with the real world and with these real problems. And that will be that thing on your resume or your university application that stands out and makes you different and unique and desirable.
Great tips. I hope that helps anyone who's looking at this path. So I guess any final words, and then we'll wrap it up.
All the best. I'm excited to see what you guys come up with. This is really, really cool. I think it's so amazing that you're doing this. And best of luck.
I'm going to make a plug for education as an educator myself, and I'm sure Nandita feels the same way. But one of the things we really need to do is share the ideas and share the knowledge. And it's a really hard thing to do, to convince others that nature and the environment is in trouble and that it needs help, and sharing the ideas and the solutions. I think education is a really important part of that, which is why I've dedicated my life to it. So I think that it's another place where I think technology can really step things up, and we've certainly seen that during a pandemic, that technology has made education possible. Without the internet and computers with cameras and meets and things like this, education would have been impossible for the last 15 months. So I think technology has a role to play in education going forward. It's not going away, and hopefully it makes education better. So yeah, with that final plug, good luck everybody, and I hope you have a great time, and I look forward to seeing all of the wonderful projects that you come up with.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing that. Take care, and all the best.
Yeah. All right.
Bye.